Brexit, Tánaiste, the world and its mothers are conscious that Westminster and its parliamentary system is chaotic. It's a shambles of epic proportion, and it's difficult to comprehend the magnitude of the disastrous management of Brexit by the UK Government and Parliament. That incompetence underlines how crucial it is to have stability of government here and to have our Oireachtas united in defence of the national interest. I think also, Tánaiste, it is fair and appropriate to acknowledge your solid contribution during a time of pending crisis and by striking a correct balance throughout a complex process. As a former Minister for Agriculture, you are aware that the UK and Ireland are each other's largest export market for food and drink, and is therefore the most exposed sector to any negative economic impact of the UK Brexit decision. Borders and tariffs between the UK and Ireland would have a disastrous impact on our agricultural industry. Therefore, access to the UK market is crucially important in all negotiations. If access is curtailed, a substantial trade agreement must be the main objective in negotiations, whereby free trade for agricultural products and food between UK and Ireland is established. Proper contingency plans are needed, as beef farmers are threatened with income reductions of up to 40%. The UK is a high-value market for beef, with prices usually above the European Union average. You are also aware that the UK leaving the European Union potentially reduces the CAP budget by up to €3 billion annually. Teagasc have estimated that farm incomes could fall by 26%, putting in danger the livelihoods of some 100,000 farmers involved in livestock and beef production and resulting in thousands of job losses. This level of a fallout will have catastrophic consequences right throughout rural Ireland. I wish to ask you, Tánaiste, what plans are in place regarding a contingency trade agreement which will alleviate concerns regarding our access to the UK market and which would guarantee a free flow of agricultural products moving from here to the UK, with the highest standards of quality being maintained. I also wish to ask you, Tánaiste, about substantial structural and adjustment funding aids which will be necessary for our farmers to ensure that there is a smooth transition period and that trade either continues or resumes. And finally, Tánaiste, could I ask you, are you satisfied with the level of preparation with regard to the bloodstock industry and the movement of racehorses and bloodstock between here, Northern Ireland and the UK?
Tánaiste.
Yeah, well, Deputy, I think the issue you raised just points to the importance of getting a withdrawal agreement agreed. Because for farmers in the Republic of Ireland, and in particular for farmers in Northern Ireland, a no-deal Brexit would be hugely challenging. For farmers in the Republic, in a no-deal scenario, we will have a very significant support package available for them. We're working with the European Commission to ensure that the Commission plays their role in that too. And we are fortunate to have a Commissioner for Agriculture who understands the Irish agricultural industry very, very well. But in the context of a no-deal Brexit and the imposition of tariffs between Britain and Ireland, but also potentially between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, goods coming south, potentially. The all-island economy as it functions today from an agri-food and agricultural perspective would be significantly disrupted. And so our focus now is to work with the European Commission on how we would respond to that, to keep people in business, to protect farm incomes. Beef and the beef industry is particularly impacted. Of the 130,000 farm families in Ireland, 100,000 of those get some income from beef. 70,000 of those get all of their farm income from beef. And 53% of all of our beef exports, which is about 85% of all the beef that's produced, gets exported to the UK, which is the highest paying market in the world. So if you impose significant tariffs on what is a tight margin business, you do a lot of damage. And we are aware of that, which is why this is not an inexpensive problem to respond to. So we have been working, the Department of Public Expenditure with the Department of Agriculture have been preparing a contingency no-deal plan. Unfortunately, Deputy, it will not be possible to have a contingency trade agreement in place either between Ireland and Britain or between the EU and Britain in the short term. And that is why the British government published their contingency plan in terms of tariffs and the approach on the island of Ireland in the context of a no deal. So if a no deal happens, well then Ireland and the EU act and the UK acts independently of each other to protect markets, but it will be a very difficult period if that were to happen. And as I say, we are in the process of finalising a detailed and significant plan to support farming through that, should it happen. The supports for farmers are have already begun. If you like, in the last budget there was a package of about 78 million for farmers. The new beef scheme, I think there's about 830 of those from Tipperary that have applied for that new beef support programme. That's a 20 million plan.
Thank you, Tánaiste.
But we need to be straight with people here. If a no-deal Brexit happens, the pressures on agriculture and on farming in Ireland will need a significant government and EU response, and they'll get that.
Thank you, Tánaiste. Deputy Lowry.
Yes, Tánaiste, I welcome the commitment of government, but I have to reiterate that there is a high level of fear and trepidation throughout the agricultural industry. Farmers and beef producers in Tipperary and throughout the country are concerned for their future. They seek assurances from the government, the type of assurances that you're giving us here today, that contingency plans will be in place to protect their livelihoods. They need to be confident that the government will stand by the industry by providing the necessary market conditions and the financial support for survival. And if you could, Tánaiste, you might refer to the bloodstock industry.
Yeah, Deputy, in relation to the first of all, on beef, as I said, we have consulted widely and we will have a plan in place that will be approved and I suspect available before a no deal happens, so that people know what supports will be in place immediately should that contingency be necessary, which I certainly hope it won't be. And I can assure other deputies as well, our plans are not based on hope. They're based on putting detailed contingency arrangements in place that are funded to deal with all eventualities. In terms of the bloodstock industry, and I think this is also the case in relation to the movement of animals north and south, from south to north, in a no-deal scenario. There will be challenges in terms of protecting against the spread of disease. And so there will need to be the appropriate systems in place to ensure that the integrity of the herd in the single market from a disease management point of view is protected. That will pose difficulties, obviously, because we will not support checks on the border. But this is part of the conversation we're having now with the European Commission in terms of how we might be able to do that.
Deputy